The Valthene royal ship was nothing like Daywan had imagined. From the outside, it looked like a massive predator made of metal and organic material, but inside it was surprisingly beautiful. The walls seemed to glow with soft light. Plants grew in carefully tended gardens along the corridors. Water flowed in decorative streams that defied gravity. Daywan walked through the ship with Isla holding his hand, Queen Nari leading them. Valthene crew members stopped and stared as they passed. A human on a royal ship was probably something none of them had ever seen before. They arrived at a large meeting room where several officials were waiting. Daywan recognized Bora, now wearing more formal robes. There were military commanders in armor, advisors in colorful clothing, and others whose roles he couldn't identify. At the far end of the room stood another human, and Daywan felt a surge of relief at seeing a familiar face, even though he had never met this person before. The human stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Ambassador Tai Yang, Earth's diplomatic representative to this sector. I was contacted about your situation and came as quickly as I could." "I'm glad you're here," Daywan said. "I think I might have accidentally started a diplomatic incident." Taeyang smiled. "On the contrary, you may have started something much better. The Valthene have never allowed humans on their homeworld. Queen Nari's invitation is unprecedented." Queen Nari took her seat at the head of the table with Isla sitting beside her. She gestured for everyone else to sit as well. When everyone was settled, she spoke. "We are here to discuss the establishment of a new medical program on Valthene. Daywan has agreed to come to our world and teach us his prosthetic technology. In return, we will provide him with everything he needs to succeed." One of the military commanders spoke up. "Your Majesty, with respect, bringing a human to Valthene could be dangerous. Many of our people will not accept an outsider. Then they will learn to accept or they will be silent," Queen Nari said firmly. "This human saved my daughter's life. He has earned the right to walk on our soil." Bora leaned forward. "There is another concern. If we make prosthetics available to everyone, as Daywan has demanded, it will disrupt the caste system. Those who were once considered disabled will become functional again. They will demand their old positions back. There will be conflict." "Good," Queen Nari said, surprising everyone. "Perhaps it is time for conflict. Perhaps it is time for change." An advisor with elaborate markings on his skin looked horrified. "Your Majesty, you cannot mean this. The caste system has kept our society stable for millennia. To change it now would be chaos." "Tell me, Counselor Taemin," Queen Nari said quietly, "if you lost a limb tomorrow, would you accept being moved to a lower caste? Would you accept losing your position, your home, your status? Would you accept being considered less than what you are?" Taemin opened his mouth and closed it again. "That is what I thought." Queen Nari looked around the table. "My daughter is royal. She should have been untouchable. But even she would have been demoted if not for Daywan's help. If this can happen to royalty, how much worse is it for common citizens? How many brilliant minds have we lost because they suffered an injury? How many talented individuals have been cast aside because they were considered broken?" She stood up, her presence commanding. "I am Queen. I have the authority to make this decision. We will implement Daywan's prosthetic program. It will be available to all Valthene, regardless of caste. Those who oppose this can appeal to the council, but I do not think they will find much support once the people understand what is possible." Bora nodded slowly. "I support this decision. As a physician, I have seen too many patients suffer needlessly. If we have the technology to help them, we have the duty to do so." One by one, the others around the table voiced their agreement. Some seemed enthusiastic, others reluctant, but none were willing to openly oppose their queen. Ambassador Taeyang spoke up. "I would like to propose that this agreement be formalized as a treaty between Earth and Valthene. This could be the beginning of a new relationship between our peoples." "I agree," Queen Nari said. "For too long, Valthene has isolated itself from other species. We believed we were superior, that we had nothing to learn from outsiders. Daywan has shown us how wrong we were. If one human can achieve what our entire medical establishment could not, imagine what we could learn by working together." Taemin, the advisor, looked uncomfortable. "Your Majesty, there will be resistance to this. Many Valthene believe that allying with humans is beneath us." "Then they are fools," Queen Nari said bluntly. "Pride is only valuable if it is earned. We have been proud without reason for too long." Isla spoke up suddenly, her young voice clear in the formal meeting room. "Mother, can I say something?" Queen Nari smiled. Of course, my heart. Isla stood up on the chair, balancing on all four limbs. Before I met Daywan, I was scared. I thought I would die alone on that planet. When he found me, I didn't know if he would help me or hurt me, but he helped me even though I was a stranger. Even though helping me was dangerous for him. He didn't care that I was Valthine or that he was human. He just cared that I was hurt. She held up her prosthetic limb. This limb is better than my old one. It's stronger. It never gets tired. Daywan made it perfect. If humans can do this, if they can be this kind, then maybe we should learn from them instead of staying away from them. The room was silent. Then Bora began to clap her four hands together in the Valthine gesture of approval. Others joined in, the sound filling the room. Queen Nari looked at her daughter with obvious pride. Isla speaks wisdom beyond her years. We will proceed with the treaty. Over the next several hours, the details were worked out. Daywan would be given the title of Royal Physician Engineer, with full authority to establish and run the prosthetics program. He would have a team of Valthine assistants who would learn his techniques. The program would be funded by the Royal Treasury, but would be available to all citizens free of charge. In return, Earth would establish a formal embassy on Valthine, the first alien embassy the planet had ever allowed. Trade agreements would be negotiated. Cultural exchanges would be arranged. It was the beginning of something that could change the entire political landscape of the sector. As the meeting concluded and officials began filing out, Daywan found himself alone with Queen Nari and Isla. "Are you sure about this?" Daywan asked. "You're changing your entire society because of me." "That's a lot of pressure," Queen Nari shook her head. "I am not changing our society because of you. I am changing it because it needs to be changed, and you showed me that it was possible. You gave me the tool. What I do with it is my choice." She placed one of her hands on his shoulder. "You saved my daughter. In Valthine culture, that creates a bond called Halar. It means life debt. I owe you everything. But more than that, I respect you. You are a good person, Daywan. The galaxy needs more people like you." Daywan felt his throat tighten. "I'm just an engineer who is trying to help a child." "No," Isla said, hugging his leg. "You're more than that. You're my friend. And you're going to help lots of other people, too. You're going to be a hero." "I don't want to be a hero," Daywan said softly. "I just want to help." "Then you will fit in perfectly on Valthine," Queen Nari said with a smile. "Because we need someone who wants to help, not someone who wants glory." Later, in the quarters that had been assigned to him, Daywan stood at the window looking out at the stars. The ship was traveling faster than light, heading toward Valthine. In a few days, he would arrive at a planet he had only read about, to work with people he barely understood, to change a society that had existed for thousands of years. It should have terrified him. Instead, he felt excited. He felt alive. His communication device beeped. It was a message from Ambassador Tae Yang. "I wanted to congratulate you officially. What you've done here will be studied for generations. You've potentially changed the course of human-alien relations forever. How does it feel?" Daywan thought about the question. Then he typed his reply. "It feels like I finally found something worth living for again." He sent the message and turned back to the window. Somewhere ahead in the darkness, a planet full of people needed his help. Somewhere ahead, there were children who would be able to walk again, adults who would regain their independence, lives that would be transformed, and somewhere in his heart, he felt Hayawan smiling at him. "I'm doing it," he whispered to the stars. "I'm saving them. I couldn't save you, but I can save them. I hope that makes you proud." The stars didn't answer, but somehow he felt that they did. In the royal quarters, Queen Nari held her daughter close as Isla drifted off to sleep. The prosthetic limb lay relaxed beside Isla's other limbs, moving slightly as she dreamed. Perfect. Functional. A miracle made real by one human's compassion. Nari thought about the challenges ahead. There would be resistance. There would be those who fought against change. But she had faced traitors and survived. She could face resistance too, and she wouldn't be alone. She had allies now. She had humans who believed in helping others. She had Daywan, whose quiet strength and determination reminded her that true power came not from weapons or status, but from the courage to do what was right even when it was difficult. The Valthine Empire was about to change. Daywan's workshop had never felt smaller. Queen Nari stood in the center of the room, her tall frame making everything look like toys. Her guards were positioned outside, but Bora the physician had come inside, along with 2 technical advisors who were examining everything with intense curiosity. Isla sat on a workbench, swinging her 4 legs happily, watching everyone with bright eyes. "This is where you built the prosthetic?" Queen Nari asked, looking around at the equipment. "Yes, it's not much, but it has everything I need. The fabricator there can build components down to the molecular level. The neural interface station over there is where I designed the connection system. And this," Day-One pulled up a holographic display, "is where I scanned Isla's biology and created the prosthetic design." Bora moved closer to the display, her golden eyes scanning the information rapidly. She spoke in Valthene and the translator converted her words. "This is remarkable. You had no data on our species, yet you successfully mapped our neural structure in just a few hours. How?" "I used adaptive scanning technology. It's designed to work with unknown biology by finding patterns in nerve signal transmission. Once I understood how Isla's nerves communicated, I could design an interface to connect with them." "Impossible," one of the technical advisors said. "Such technology does not exist." Day-One smiled slightly. "It does now. I developed it myself 6 years ago." Queen Nari was examining the prosthetic arm that sat on the workbench, a prototype Day-One had been building for his own research. She picked it up carefully with 2 of her hands, turning it over. "These filaments, they connect to the nerves?" "Yes. Each filament is individually controlled and can grow slightly to find the optimal connection point. They're made from a biocompatible polymer that the body won't reject. Once connected, they transmit nerve signals both ways, allowing full control and sensation." Bora pulled up Isla's medical scans on another display. "I need to understand something. On Valthene, when someone loses a limb, we can regrow it, but only if the person is very young and the wound is treated immediately. The process takes months and is extremely expensive. Most citizens cannot afford it. For them, losing a limb is permanent." She turned to face Day-One. "You're telling me that with this technology, anyone can have a new limb? Rich or poor? Young or old? That's the idea. On Earth, prosthetics are available to everyone who needs them. No one should have to live with disability just because they can't afford treatment." The room went silent. The Valthene looked at each other with expressions Day-One couldn't quite read. Queen Nari spoke slowly. "On Valthene, we have castes. Your position in society is determined by your birth and your physical capability. Someone who loses a limb loses their caste. They cannot marry well. They cannot hold important positions. They become less than what they were." She looked at Isla and pain crossed her face. "My daughter's injury would have destroyed her future. She is royal, but she would have been unable to fulfill royal duties. She would have been moved to a lower caste. She would have been seen as damaged, broken, unworthy." "That's terrible," Day-One said quietly. "That is our way. It has been our way for thousands of years." Queen Nari walked over to Isla and touched the prosthetic limb gently. "But now my daughter has a new limb. She can walk, run, feel, do everything she did before. And you say this can be done for anyone?" "With the right equipment and training, yes." Bora was studying the neural interface specifications with intense focus. "This changes everything. If we could implement this technology on Valthene, thousands of citizens who are currently considered disabled could become fully functional again. The entire caste system would be disrupted. Is that a bad thing?" Day-One asked. The technical advisors looked shocked that he would even ask such a question, but Queen Nari laughed, a sound like bells ringing. "You are very bold, human, to question the foundations of an entire civilization so casually. I'm sorry if I offended you, but where I come from, we believe everyone has value, regardless of their physical abilities. A missing limb doesn't make someone less of a person. Humans think very differently from Valthene," Queen Nari said. There was no anger in her voice, just curiosity. "Tell me, Day-One, why are you here? Why are you alone on this remote station? A man with your skills could be wealthy and famous on Earth." Day-One was quiet for a moment. Then he walked over to a small shelf and picked up a photograph. It showed a young girl, maybe 7 years old, with bright eyes and a huge smile. She was sitting in a wheelchair, but she looked happy. "This is my daughter, Hee-Won. She had a genetic condition that caused progressive nerve damage. By the time she was 6, she couldn't walk. By 7, she couldn't use her arms. I dedicated my life to developing technology that could bypass damaged nerves and restore function." He stared at the photograph, his voice becoming rough with emotion. I was so close. The prosthetics worked. The neural interfaces worked. But I needed time to adapt them for internal nerve damage, and I didn't have enough time. She died when she was 8. I came here because I couldn't stand being around people anymore. Everyone looked at me with pity, and I hated it. Queen Nari took the photograph from him and studied it carefully. She looks like she was a wonderful child. She was. She was brave and smart and kind. Even when she was in pain, she always smiled. Daewon wiped his eyes. When I saw Isla lying there injured, I saw he won. I saw a chance to save someone when I couldn't save my own daughter. I had to try. Isla hopped down from the workbench and walked over to Daewon. She hugged him tightly. You are a good father, she said simply. Even if your daughter is gone, you are still a good father. Daewon hugged her back, tears running down his face. He had not cried like this in years. Queen Nari watched this exchange with an expression that had softened completely. When Daewon finally composed himself, she spoke in a formal tone. Daewon of Earth, I must tell you something. Isla was not simply in an escape pod by accident. 3 days ago, there was an attempt to overthrow my rule. Traitors attacked the royal palace. I sent Isla away to protect her, but her ship was damaged and crashed here. For 3 days, I believed my daughter was dead. I have been hunting the traitors and mourning her loss at the same time. She paused, her voice becoming thick with emotion. You gave me back my daughter. You gave her back her future. You did this without asking for payment, without asking for anything at all. You simply helped because you could. This is not common in the galaxy. This is not common even among my own people. Bora spoke up. Your Majesty, I must say something. I have examined the prosthetic thoroughly. The technology is advanced beyond anything we possess. If we could learn this technique, if we could bring it to Valthine, it would save countless lives. It would change our entire society. I know, Queen Nari said. She turned to Daewon. I have a proposal for you, human. Come to Valthine. Come to our homeworld as a royal physician and engineer. Teach us your techniques. Help us build a program that can provide prosthetics to all our people who need them. You will have unlimited resources, whatever equipment you need, assistance, anything you desire. Daewon stared at her. You want me to come to Valthine? But I'm human. Your people don't like outsiders. My people don't understand outsiders. That is different. You can show them that aliens are not to be feared. You can show them that kindness exists beyond our species. Queen Nari placed her hand over her heart again. I am asking you, as a mother who owes you everything, please consider this. Daewon looked around his workshop. This place had been his prison and his sanctuary for so long. Here he had hidden from the world, from his grief, from his guilt. But Isla had found him anyway. And in helping her, he had felt something he thought was dead inside him. He had felt purpose. I have one condition, Daewon said slowly. If I do this, the prosthetics program must be available to everyone. Not just royalty. Not just the wealthy. Everyone who needs a limb gets one, regardless of their caste or status. If you can't agree to that, I won't help. The technical advisors gasped. One of them spoke urgently to the Queen in Valthine. Queen Nari listened, then held up a hand for silence. What you ask would fundamentally change our society. The caste system has existed for 3,000 years. To offer such technology to everyone equally would disrupt everything. Yes, Daewon said. It would. But it's the right thing to do, Queen Nari smiled. You are either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both. She extended one of her hands toward him. I accept your condition. Come to Valthine, Daewon. Help us change. Daewon took her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, and her grip was strong. Then I accept. Isla cheered and jumped up and down on all 4 limbs. You're coming home with us. You're coming home. And for the first time in 5 years, Daewon felt like he might actually have a home again. The alarm system screamed through the station like a dying animal. Daewon jumped up from his desk, his heart already racing. He had been trying to contact Valthine authorities for 2 days with no response. Now something was happening, and his instincts told him it was nothing good. He ran to the command center and pulled up the external sensors. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. 3 ships hung in orbit above the planet. They were massive, each one at least a kilometer long. Their design was sleek and aggressive, covered in what looked like organic armor. Weapons ports glowed with barely contained energy. These were Valthine warships, and they were targeting his tiny station. Oh no, Daewon whispered. Oh no, no, no. Isla appeared in the doorway, moving easily on her 4 limbs now. She had adapted to the prosthetic remarkably fast. What is that sound? She asked. Your people are here, Daewon said. His voice sounded calmer than he felt. "I think they found you." Isla's face lit up with joy. "My mother. She came for me." Then she saw Daywan's expression and her happiness faded. "Why do you look scared?" "Because I took a Valthine royal child into my station and performed surgery on her without permission. Your people might think I kidnapped you or hurt you." Daywan tried to smile but failed. "They might be very angry with me." A new alarm blared. Something was landing outside the station. Daywan pulled up the external cameras and watched as a shuttle descended from one of the warships. It was large and elegant, decorated with markings he didn't recognize. The ship landed with perfect precision about 50 meters from the station entrance. The rear hatch opened and soldiers poured out. They were tall, much taller than humans, and they moved with deadly grace. Each one wore armor that seemed to be part metal and part living tissue. They carried weapons that hummed with power. 20, 30, 40 soldiers formed a perimeter around the shuttle, their weapons pointed at the station. Then she emerged. Daywan knew immediately who she was. She stood nearly 3 meters tall with pale blue skin that seemed to glow with inner light. She wore robes of deep purple that moved like liquid. Her forearms were adorned with golden bands. Her face was beautiful and terrible at the same time. With those same golden eyes that Isla had, but colder, harder, filled with barely contained rage, Queen Nari had come for her daughter. Behind the queen came another Valthine, smaller and dressed in white robes. This one carried medical equipment. A physician, Daywan guessed. That was probably Bora, if his brief research on Valthine culture was correct. "Isla," Daywan said quietly, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. When I open that door, I want you to go to your mother immediately. Tell her I helped you. Tell her I never hurt you." "Can you do that?" Isla nodded solemnly. She walked over to Daywan and took his hand with one of her smaller limbs. "You saved me. I will tell her. She will understand." Daywan hoped she was right. He walked to the airlock, Isla beside him, and opened it. The Valthine soldiers immediately raised their weapons higher. Every gun was pointed directly at Daywan's chest. He could see the energy building in the barrels, ready to fire. One word from their queen and he would be dead. But he stood his ground. He had survived war, loss, and grief. He wasn't going to show fear now. Queen Nari stepped forward, her eyes locked on the station entrance. When she saw Isla, everything stopped. The queen's face transformed. Rage giving way to shock, shock giving way to something that looked like desperate hope. "Isla," she said, her voice was deep and musical, even without the translator. "Mother." Isla ran forward on all 4 limbs, moving so fast she was almost a blur. Every weapon tracked her movement, but no one fired. Isla reached her mother, and the queen dropped to her knees, gathering her daughter into all 4 arms. She held Isla tight, rocking back and forth, making sounds that transcended language. They were the sounds of a mother who thought her child was dead and had just gotten her back. Daywan watched, his own eyes burning with tears. He thought of Hewan, of how he would have given anything for one more moment to hold her. Queen Nari pulled back and began examining Isla frantically, checking her for injuries. That was when she saw the prosthetic limb. She froze. Her golden eyes widened. She looked at the limb, then at Isla's face, then at the limb again. She spoke rapidly in her own language. Isla responded, gesturing toward Daywan. The queen's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto him with an intensity that made him want to step back. But he didn't. The physician Bora moved forward and began examining Isla as well. She pulled out a scanner and ran it over the prosthetic, her face showing surprise, then shock, then something like awe. Queen Nari stood up slowly. She was so tall that Daywan had to crane his neck to look at her face. She walked toward him, and the soldiers parted to let her pass. Every weapon still tracked Daywan. One wrong move, and he was dead. The queen stopped right in front of him. They were so close, Daywan could see his reflection in her golden eyes. When she spoke, the translator on his suit converted her words. "You are human. Yes, my name is Daywan. I'm an engineer and doctor. I found Isla 3 days ago, injured and dying. I brought her inside and saved her life. You performed surgery on my daughter. You attached a mechanical device to her body." The queen's voice was deadly quiet. "Without permission. Without authorization. Without understanding what you were doing." "I understood enough," Daywan said. "I understood that she was in pain and that I could help. That was all I needed to know. You could have killed her. You could have damaged her permanently. You had no right. You're right. I had no right. But she had a right to not suffer, and I had the ability to help her. So I did. Day One met the Queen's eyes steadily. I would do it again. The silence stretched out. Day One could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. This was it. This was where his life ended, because he had dared to help a child who needed him. Then Queen Nari did something unexpected. She turned to Bora and spoke quickly. The physician responded, gesturing at her scanner, showing the Queen something on the display. The Queen looked at the data for a long moment. Then she looked back at Day One. My physician tells me that this prosthetic is extraordinary. She says the neural integration is more advanced than anything in Valthene medical technology. She says that Isla has full sensation and control, that the limb is responding as if it were her own natural limb. The Queen paused. She says this should not be possible, that even our best surgeons could not achieve this. How did you do this? Day One swallowed. I've spent 15 years developing prosthetic technology for humans. I was trying to save my daughter, who had a disease that was slowly paralyzing her limbs. I failed to save her in time, but the techniques I developed worked. I adapted them for Isla's biology. Your daughter died? Yes, 5 years ago. Queen Nari was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, become less cold. Why did you help Isla? You must have known she was Valthene. You must have known helping her could bring trouble. I knew. I didn't care. She was a child and she was suffering. That was all that mattered. The Queen studied his face for what felt like an eternity. Then she spoke a command in her own language. Immediately, every weapon lowered. The soldiers stepped back. Queen Nari placed one of her hands over her heart in a gesture Day One didn't recognize. You saved my daughter's life. You gave her back something our own people would have said was lost forever. You showed kindness to a stranger when you could have left her to die. She paused, and something like a smile crossed her face. I came here prepared to destroy this station and everyone in it for taking my child. Instead, I find a human who risked everything to help her. You have surprised me, Day One of Earth. Does that mean you're not going to kill me? Day One asked. For the first time, Queen Nari actually smiled. No, human. I am not going to kill you. Instead, I would like to understand how you did this. I would like to see your workshop, your technology, your methods. Will you show me? Day One let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Yes, I'll show you everything. Isla ran over and took both her mother's hand and Day One's hand. Come, she said happily. I will show you too. And so Day One led a Valthene queen and her entourage into his small station, never imagining where this moment would lead. Day One stood in his workshop staring at the holographic display of Isla's biology. The scan had taken 3 hours to complete, and the results were both fascinating and challenging. Valthene anatomy was completely different from human anatomy, but there were enough similarities that he thought he could make this work. This is going to be complicated, he muttered to himself. Isla was resting in the medical bay, sedated to help with the pain. Day One had promised her that he would build her a new limb, and he never broke his promises, especially not to children. The first problem was the neural structure. Humans had nerves that ran through their limbs in relatively simple pathways. Valthene had something more complex. They had clusters of nerve bundles that functioned almost like small brains throughout their body. Each limb could process sensory information independently before sending it to the main brain. Day One had never seen anything like it. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. He started by designing the basic structure. The limb needed to be the right length and shape to match Isla's other 3 limbs. He measured carefully, using the scans to create a perfect model. The fabricator hummed to life, beginning to print the skeletal framework from titanium alloy and carbon fiber. While that worked, Day One moved on to the neural interface. This was the most critical part. If he couldn't connect the prosthetic to Isla's nervous system properly, it would just be a useless piece of metal and plastic. She needed to be able to feel through it, control it naturally, have it become part of her body. He had developed a new type of neural connector for human patients, tiny filaments that could integrate directly with nerve endings. The technology was revolutionary. It had won awards, but it had come too late to save Haiwan. Day One pushed that thought away. He couldn't think about his daughter right now. He had to focus on Isla. He modified the neural interface design, adapting it for Valthene biology. The filaments would need to connect to multiple nerve clusters instead of single pathways. It was like trying to plug one computer into 5 different networks simultaneously. One mistake and he could cause permanent nerve damage. Hours passed. Day one didn't eat. He barely drank water. His entire world narrowed down to the holographic displays, the calculations, the simulations running on his computers. He tested each component virtually hundreds of times before approving it for fabrication. Around midnight, Isla woke up. D1 heard her making sounds in the medical bay and went to check on her. She was sitting up on the table looking around the room with wide eyes. "How are you feeling?" Day1 asked, activating the translator. "Better," Isla said. "The pain is less." "What are you doing?" "Building your new limb. Would you like to see?" Isla nodded eagerly. Day1 helped her down from the table and supported her as she hopped on her 3 remaining limbs to the workshop. When she saw the holographic displays and the partially fabricated prosthetic, her golden eyes grew even wider. "This is for me?" she asked in wonder. "Yes. It's not finished yet, but I wanted to show you." Day1 pulled up a simulation showing how the finished limb would look and function. "See here? These tiny threads will connect to your nerves. You'll be able to move it just by thinking, the same way you move your other limbs. You'll even be able to feel through it." Isla watched the simulation with complete attention. When it finished, she looked up at Day1 with an expression he couldn't quite read. "On my world," she said quietly. "When someone loses a limb, they cannot get a new one. They are marked as broken. They lose their place in society. My mother is very important, and I was supposed to be important too, but now I am broken." Day1 knelt down so he was at her eye level. "You're not broken, Isla, you're injured. There's a difference. And where I come from, we believe that losing a limb doesn't make you less than anyone else. It just means you need some help, and there's no shame in that." "Humans think differently than Valthine," Isla said. "Maybe. But I think being kind is the same everywhere." Isla was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out with one of her upper limbs and touched Day1's hand. Her skin was cool and smooth with a texture like polished stone. "Thank you," she said simply. Day1 smiled. "You're welcome. Now I need to get back to work. Do you want to watch or would you rather rest?" "I want to watch," Isla said firmly. So Day1 pulled up a chair for her and Isla sat in the workshop watching him work. She asked questions occasionally, which the translator converted. Day1 answered as best he could, explaining the process in simple terms. As dawn broke outside the station, the prosthetic was nearly complete. Day1 held it up to the light, examining every detail. It was beautiful in its own way, a perfect blend of engineering and art. The outer shell was made to match Isla's natural skin color, a pale blue that seemed to glow slightly in the right light. The joints moved smoothly, powered by micromotors. The neural interface bristled with thousands of tiny filaments ready to connect. "It's ready," Day1 said. "But I need to warn you, Isla, the attachment process might hurt. The neural connections have to grow and integrate, and that takes time. You'll need to be very brave." Isla lifted her chin. "I am Valthine royalty. We are always brave. Royalty." The word sent a chill down Day1's spine. He had suspected Isla might be important, but royalty? That made this situation even more dangerous. But it was too late to back out now. He prepared Isla carefully, cleaning the wound site and applying a local anesthetic. Then with steady hands honed by years of surgical experience, he began attaching the prosthetic. The mechanical connection came first, bonding to the bone and muscle tissue. Then came the crucial part, connecting the neural filaments. Each filament had to be placed precisely. Day1 used a microscopic manipulator, working at a level where his own hands would have been too clumsy. One by one, the filaments found their targets, the nerve clusters that would allow Isla to control her new limb. The process took 6 hours. Isla sat perfectly still the entire time, never complaining, never crying out. Day1 was amazed by her courage. Finally, it was done. Day1 stepped back and looked at his work. The prosthetic was attached, integrated, complete. But would it function? "All right, Isla," he said gently. "Try to move it. Just think about moving it the same way you think about moving your other limbs." Isla stared at the prosthetic limb. Her face was tense with concentration. For a long moment, nothing happened. Day1's heart sank. Had he failed? Then the limb twitched, Isla gasped. The limb moved again, this time more deliberately. The joints bent. The digits flexed. Isla lifted the limb, held it in front of her face, turned it back and forth. "I can feel it," she whispered. "I can feel my fingers moving. I can feel the air on my skin." Daewon let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Can you stand?" Isla slid off the chair carefully. She put weight on the prosthetic limb tentatively at first, then more confidently. She took one step, then another. Then she was walking, really walking, using all four limbs naturally. And then Isla did something that made Daewon's throat tighten with emotion. She started running. She ran around the workshop laughing, a sound of pure joy that needed no translation. She moved like the child she was, free and unbroken. When she finally stopped, she was standing in front of Daewon with tears streaming down her face. But she was smiling. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Daewon knelt down and Isla threw her arms around him, all four of them holding tight. He hugged her back, this alien child who had somehow found her way into his broken heart. "You're welcome, little star," he said softly. The red sun was setting over Outpost Station Meridian when Daewon noticed something wrong with the exterior sensor. He had been alone at this research facility for 8 months now, and every day followed the same quiet pattern. Wake up, check the systems, run experiments, eat alone, sleep alone, repeat. That was exactly how he wanted it. He pulled on his environmental suit and stepped outside into the thin atmosphere. The planet was barely habitable, which made it perfect for someone who wanted to disappear. Daewon walked along the metal pathway toward the sensor array, his boots crunching on the rust-colored soil. The station sat on a flat plain that stretched for miles in every direction. Nothing ever happened here. That was when he saw the wreckage. About 200 meters from the station, something had crashed. Smoke still rose from the twisted metal. Daewon's heart began to pound. He started running, his suit limiting his speed but not his urgency. As he got closer, he could see it was an escape pod. A small one. The design was unfamiliar, definitely not human. Then he saw the child. She was lying on the ground near the pod, her body curled into a ball. Her skin was pale blue and she had 4 arms instead of 2. But what made Daewon's stomach turn was the injury. Her lower right limb was gone, severed cleanly about halfway down. Purple blood had pooled beneath her, now dried and dark. "Oh no," Daewon whispered. No, he knelt beside her and checked for vital signs. Her chest was moving. She was breathing. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by panic. He had no idea how to treat an alien. He didn't even know what species she was. The child's eyes fluttered open. They were large and golden with vertical pupils. When she saw Daewon's face behind his helmet, she made a sound like a wounded animal and tried to crawl away. Her 3 remaining limbs scrambled against the dirt. "Wait, please," Daewon said softly, even though he knew she couldn't understand. "I want to help you." He moved slowly, carefully, the way he used to approach scared animals back on Earth. The child watched him with terrified eyes. She was so small, maybe the size of an 8-year-old human child. Her body was shaking, whether from fear or shock or blood loss, he couldn't tell. Daewon pulled out his medical scanner and pointed it at her. The device beeped and flashed, trying to analyze her biology. The results were confusing, but one thing was clear. She was dying. She had lost too much blood and her body temperature was dropping. He made a decision. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and picked her up. She was lighter than he expected. The child struggled weakly, making that wounded sound again. Daewon held her gently but firmly against his chest. "I'm sorry," he said, "but if I leave you here, you'll die." He carried her back to the station as quickly as he could. Every step felt too slow. The child had stopped struggling and gone limp in his arms. That scared him even more than her fighting had. Inside the station, Daewon rushed to his medical bay. It was designed for human injuries, but it would have to do. He laid the child on the examination table and immediately began hooking her up to monitoring equipment. Her vital signs appeared on the screen, translated into readings he could understand. Her heart rate was too fast. Her blood pressure was too low. She was going into shock. Daewon worked quickly, his hands moving with practiced precision. He had been a trauma surgeon before becoming a prosthetics engineer. Those skills came rushing back now. He cleaned the wound on her severed limb and applied a synthetic bandage that would work on most carbon-based life forms. He started an IV with a universal fluid that would help stabilize her blood pressure. The child's eyes opened again. She stared at him. those golden eyes full of fear and confusion. Daewon smiled at her even though she probably couldn't read human expressions. "You're safe now," he said gently. "I promise I won't hurt you." He worked through the night monitoring her constantly. Her condition slowly stabilized. By morning, her vital signs had improved enough that Daewon finally let himself relax. He sat down in a chair next to the table and rubbed his tired eyes. That was when the child spoke. The words were in a language he had never heard before, musical and strange. But the translator device on his workbench picked them up and converted them into text on a screen. "Where am I? Where is my mother?" Daewon looked at the child. She was awake, watching him with less fear than before but still wary. He activated the translator and spoke slowly. "You're at a human research station. You crashed in an escape pod. I found you and brought you inside. My name is Daewon." The translator worked, converting his words into her language. The child listened, then responded. The machine translated, "My name is Isla. I am Valthine. I must return to my people." Valthine. Daewon's blood went cold. The Valthine Empire was one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They were also known for being extremely proud and hostile to outsiders. If he had accidentally taken a Valthine child, there could be serious diplomatic consequences. But looking at Isla, lying injured on his table, none of that seemed to matter. "I'll try to contact your people," Daewon said. "But first I need to ask you about your limb. Does it hurt?" Isla's face twisted in what he recognized as pain, even across species. "Yes, it hurts very much, all the time." Daewon nodded slowly. "I might be able to help with that. I make artificial limbs for humans who have lost theirs. I could try to make one for you. Would you let me?" Isla stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked down at her severed limb, at the bandage that covered the stump. When she looked back at Daewon, something had changed in her eyes. "You would do that? For me? But I am not human." "No," Daewon said softly. "But you're a child and you're in pain. That's all that matters to me." For the first time since he found her, Isla smiled. It was a small, tentative smile, but it reminded Daewon so much of his daughter that his chest tightened. Daewon used to smile like that when she was scared but trying to be brave. "Yes," Isla said. "Please help me." Daewon stood up and looked around his workshop. He had everything he needed here. The fabrication equipment, the neural interface technology, the biocompatible materials. He had spent years developing these techniques, first trying to save his daughter, then trying to save anyone he could. Maybe he could save this one. "All right," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "Let's get started."